The full moon hung low over Willowhaven, its silvery light threading through the ancient pines that guarded the town's forest. Lila Hawthorne, a painter whose quiet demeanor hid a heart drawn to the mystical, wandered the winding trails, her sketchbook pressed against her chest. The air was crisp, scented with pine and damp earth, and the night hummed with an enchantment that made her pulse quicken. She wore a woolen shawl over her paint-stained smock, her auburn hair catching the moonlight as she moved. At 25, Lila had always felt like an outsider in Willowhaven, her days spent capturing the world's fleeting beauty on canvas, while others bustled through their predictable lives. She paused by a gnarled cedar, its roots sprawling like veins across the path. The moon cast long shadows, and she opened her sketchbook, her charcoal pencil dancing to capture the interplay of light and dark. The forest felt alive, whispering secrets she couldn't quite grasp. As she sketched, a sound broke the silence. A rustle in the underbrush, sharp and deliberate. Lila froze, her breath catching. The rustle came again, followed by a low, haunting howl that echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down her spine. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling but firm. The forest swallowed her words, offering only silence in return. Her heart raced, torn between fear and a strange magnetic curiosity. She tucked her sketchbook under her arm and stepped off the path, her boots sinking into the soft earth. The howl had come from deeper within the woods, where the trees grew, denser, and the moonlight struggled to pierce the canopy. "Lila, you're being reckless," she muttered to herself, but her feet carried her forward. The air grew colder, the shadows thicker, and she clutched her shawl tighter. Another howl, closer now, vibrated through her chest. She reached a small clearing where the moonlight pooled like liquid silver, and there, beneath a towering willow, she saw it. A flash of movement, silver fur glinting in the light. Her breath hitched. Whatever it was no ordinary animal. She stepped closer, her curiosity outweighing her fear. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. Though her trembling hands betrayed her, the rustling stopped, and the forest held its breath. Lila stood alone in the clearing, the moonlight painting her in shades of silver, her heart pounding as she waited for whatever, or whoever, lurked beyond the trees. Lila's eyes darted. Across the clearing, the willow's drooping branches swaying like a curtain in the faint breeze. The silver-furred figure emerged, towering and graceful, its form both beastly and human. It was a werewolf, its fur shimmering like moonlight on water, its eyes glowing like molten gold. Lila's sketchbook slipped from her hands, landing with a soft thud. She stumbled back, her breath shallow, but the creature didn't advance. Instead, it lowered its head, its gaze locking with hers. "Please," a deep, resonant voice said, startling her. "Don't run." The werewolf's words were human, laced with a quiet desperation. Lila's throat tightened. You can speak?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. The creature nodded, its movements slow and deliberate, as if trying not to frighten her. "I mean you no harm. My name is Elias." He stepped into the moonlight, revealing a muscular frame beneath the fur, his eyes holding a depth that spoke of pain and longing. Lila's fear ebbed, replaced by a flicker of fascination. "I'm Lila," she said, her voice steadier now. "Why are you here, Elias? What are you?" Elias's ears twitched, and he glanced at the moon. "I'm caught between worlds. This form comes with the full moon, but I'm still me. Or, I try to be." His voice softened, carrying a weight she couldn't yet understand. "Why show yourself to me?" Lila asked, stepping closer despite the voice in her head screaming to flee. "I heard you," Elias said. "Your pencil on the page, your footsteps. You weren't afraid of the night. I thought, maybe you'd understand." His golden eyes searched hers, vulnerable yet guarded. Lila's heart fluttered. There was something raw in his gaze, something that mirrored her own quiet loneliness. "I don't understand," she admitted, "but I want to. You're not like anything I've ever seen." Elias's lips twitched, almost a smile. "And you're not like anyone I've met." He hesitated, then stepped back. "I shouldn't." "Stay, it's not safe." "Wait," Lila called as he turned. "Will I see you again?" He paused, his silhouette blending with the shadows. "If you come back to this clearing, you might." With that, he melted into the forest, leaving Lila alone with her racing thoughts. She retrieved her sketchbook, her fingers trembling as she traced the outline of his eyes in her mind. The night felt different now, charged with possibility. She turned back toward Willowhaven, determined to return the next night, her heart alight with a spark she hadn't felt in years. The following night, Lila returned to the clearing, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, a lantern swinging from her hand. The moon was still full, its light softer now, diffused by wisps of cloud. She'd barely slept, her dreams haunted by golden eyes, and a voice that resonated like a half-remembered song. Willowhaven buzzed with its usual rhythm, farmers at the market, children playing by the river. But Lila felt detached, her thoughts tethered to the forest. She settled beneath the willow, her lantern casting a warm glow. "Elias!" she called softly, her voice swallowed by the night. Minutes passed, and doubt crept in. Had she imagined him? Then, a rustle, deliberate, close. Elias stepped into the light, his fur less wild tonight, his posture more human. "You came back," he said, his voice warm but cautious. "I said I would," Lila replied, meeting his gaze. "I want to know you, Elias. The real you, not just this." She gestured to his form. Elias's ears flicked, and he sat across from her, the grass bending under his weight. "The real me is complicated. This curse, it's not just a body. It's a fight, every day, to hold on to who I am." "Tell me," Lila urged, her eyes earnest. "What's it like?" He exhaled, a sound like a sigh and a growl. "It's like being torn in two. The wolf wants to run, to hunt, to be free. But the man, he wants to belong, to be seen." His gaze dropped. "I've been alone a long time." Lila's chest ached. "I know what that's like. Willowhaven's small, and people talk, but they don't really see me, not the way I see the world." Elias tilted his head. "You see it in your art, don't you? I saw your sketchbook last night. The way you draw the moonlight. It's like you feel it." Lila blushed, surprised he'd noticed. "It's how I make sense of things. But you're something I can't capture yet." "Maybe you will," Elias said, a hint of warmth in his tone. They talked until the moon began to dip, sharing fragments of their lives. Lila's quiet days painting, Elias's nights wandering the forest. As he stood to leave, he paused. "Be careful, Lila. The forest isn't always kind." She nodded, her lantern flickering as she watched him disappear. Back in her cottage, she opened her sketchbook, her pencil sketching the curve of his jaw, the glint of his eyes. Sleep claimed her, but her dreams were of wolves and moonlight, and a man who felt like home. For a week, Lila returned to the clearing each night, her heart a mix of hope and dread. Elias didn't always appear, but when he did, their conversations deepened, weaving a fragile thread between them. She learned he'd once lived among others like him, but left, seeking something more than the wild. Tonight, she sat on a moss-covered rock, her sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of the willow. The moon was waning, its light fainter, but the forest still sang with mystery. "Lila," Elias's voice came from the shadows, softer than usual. He stepped into view, his fur catching the dim light. "You're stubborn, you know that." She laughed, closing her sketchbook. "And you're elusive. Why do you keep warning me to stay away?" "Because I'm dangerous," he said, his eyes intense. Not just me. The others. There are wolves in these woods who don't care about humanity. Others. Lila's brow furrowed. Like you? Not like me, Elias said, his voice low. They've given in to the beast. They don't come near Willow Haven. Yet. But you're out here. Alone. I'm not alone, Lila said, meeting his gaze. I'm with you. Elias's expression softened, but worry lingered. You don't know what you're stepping into, Lila. I want you safe. And I want you to stop hiding, she countered. You're not just a wolf, Elias. I see you. The man who talks about the stars, who remembers his mother's lullabies. Let me in. He was silent, then nodded. All right, but promise me, if I say run, you run. Deal, Lila said, her smile bright. They sat together, the night wrapping around them like a cocoon. As she walked home, the forest seemed to hum with a new energy, but a distant rustle made her pause. She glanced back, seeing nothing but shadows. Her cottage welcomed her with its familiar warmth, but as she locked the door, she couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching. The next night, Lila arrived at the clearing, with a thermos of tea, determined to make their meetings feel less fleeting. Elias was already there, leaning against the willow, his golden eyes catching the starlight. Tea, he said, a playful note in his voice. You're domesticating. Me already, Lila grinned, pouring him a cup. Consider it a peace offering. I want to know more about you, Elias. Where did you come from? He took the cup, his clawed hands surprisingly gentle. A long way from here. A village in the mountains before the curse. I was a blacksmith's son, always tinkering. Then, one night changed everything. The curse? Lila asked, her voice soft. He nodded, staring into the tea. A wolf bit me, under a blood moon. I didn't ask for this, but it's mine to carry. His voice grew distant. I left my family, couldn't risk hurting them. Lila reached out, her hand hovering near his. You're not a monster, Elias. You're here, talking to me, drinking tea. That's not a beast. He met her eyes, a flicker of hope in his gaze. You make it sound simple. It's not, she said. But it's worth it. You're worth it. They talked until dawn threatened, sharing stories of lost dreams and quiet hopes. Elias spoke of the forest's secrets, Lila of her painting's hidden meanings. As they parted, he pressed a small stone into her hand, a smooth, moonlit pebble. For luck, he said. Lila walked home, the pebble warm in her pocket, her heart full. But as she reached her cottage, a shadow moved in the trees, too quick to follow. She clutched the pebble tighter, locking her door against the night, unaware of the golden eyes watching from the darkness. Not Elias's, but something wilder, hungrier. Lila's cottage glowed with the soft light of candles, their flames dancing across her latest canvas. A swirl of silver and gold, capturing Elias's eyes under the moonlit willow. The painting was unlike anything she'd created before, raw and alive, as if the forest itself had guided her brush. Willow Haven's morning buzzed outside her window, cartwheels creaking, neighbours calling to one another. But Lila was lost in her work, the pebble Elias had given her resting on her desk like a talisman. Since their starlit conversation, her art had taken on a new intensity, each stroke infused with the mystery of him. She stepped back, wiping paint from her hands, and smiled. The canvas felt like a bridge to Elias, a way to hold on to their fleeting nights. But as she prepared to head to the market, a knock startled her. Opening the door, she found Mrs. Harrow, the town's baker, her round face creased with curiosity. Lila, dear, your paintings at the gallery are causing quite a stir, Mrs. Harrow said, her eyes gleaming. Those wolves, where do you get such ideas? Lila's heart skipped. Just imagination, she said, forcing a smile. The forest inspires me. They're so lifelike, Mrs. Harrow pressed, stepping closer. Almost like you've seen one up close. Have you, Lila? Seen something in those woods? Lila's grip tightened on the doorframe. Only trees and moonlight, Mrs. Harrow. I should get to the market, running low on paints. The baker nodded, but her gaze lingered, sharp and knowing. Lila hurried out, her shawl pulled tight against the morning chill. At the market, stalls brimmed with apples and fresh bread, but whispers followed her. Lila's wolves, she overheard a merchant say. They're too real for fancy. Her paintings, hung in the town's small gallery, had drawn attention she hadn't anticipated. Pride mingled with unease. She'd poured Elias into her art, and now Willowhaven was watching. That night, she returned to the clearing, her lantern casting a warm glow. Elias was waiting, his silver fur catching the waning moon's light. "You're late," he teased, his voice a low rumble. "Got held up," Lila said, setting her lantern down. "My paintings are getting noticed." Elias tilted his head. "The ones of me." She blushed, nodding. "I didn't mean to make it obvious, but you're my muse now." His golden eyes softened. "I'm honored. But be careful, Lila. People talk, and talk can turn to trouble." "I can handle it," she said, though doubt flickered in her chest. "Elias, what's it like? Being seen, but not really." He sat beside her, the grass rustling. "It's like shouting into the wind. You're there, but no one hears the real you. Until now." His gaze met hers, warm and steady. "You see me, Lila, more than I thought anyone could." Her heart swelled. They talked of art and dreams, Elias sharing tales of his old village, Lila describing her childhood sketching. By the river, as dawn neared, he stood. "I'll find you tomorrow," he said, disappearing into the shadows. Lila walked home, her steps light, but a stranger's voice at the market echoed in her mind. "Those wolves aren't just paintings." She locked, her door glancing at the canvas, its golden eyes seeming to watch her. The next evening, Lila arrived at the clearing with a sketchbook and a resolve to understand Elias's world. The moon was a thin crescent, casting faint light, but Elias's presence filled the space. He leaned against the willow, his fur less wild, his posture almost human. "You brought your sketchbook," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Thought I'd draw you properly," Lila said, flipping it open. "No more sneaking glimpses." Elias chuckled, a sound like rolling thunder. "Bold of you. Most would run from a subject like me." "I'm not most," she replied, her pencil already moving. "Tell me more about the curse, Elias. You said it's a fight. What does that mean?" He sighed, settling on the grass. "Every full moon the wolf takes over. It's instinct, hunger, freedom. But the man fights to stay in control, to remember who I am. It's exhausting, Lila, like holding a storm in your hands." Her pencil paused. "Do you ever lose?" "Sometimes," he admitted, his voice low. "That's why I left my home. I hurt someone once. Not badly, but enough. I swore I'd never let it happen again." Lila's chest tightened. "You're not that person anymore. I see it in you, the way you talk, the way you're here with me. You make me want to believe that," he said, his eyes searching hers. "But the wolf's always there, waiting." "Then let me help you fight it," she said, her voice firm. "You don't have to do this alone." Elias's ears flicked, and he looked away. "You don't know what you're offering. This curse, it's not just mine to bear. It could hurt you." "I'm not afraid," Lila said, though her hands trembled slightly. "I want to know all of you, Elias, the man and the wolf." He met her gaze, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You're stubborn as hell, you know that," she grinned. "Takes one to know one." They fell into easy conversation, Lila sketching, as Elias spoke of his love for the stars, how they anchored him when the wolf roared loudest. As he left, he brushed her hand, a fleeting touch that warmed her to her core. But as she walked home, a howl, sharp and unfamiliar, cut through the Night, closer than before. She clutched her sketchbook, hurrying to her cottage, the forest shadows feeling heavier than ever. Willow Haven's market was alive with colour, but attention threaded through the chatter. Lila navigated the stalls, her basket heavy with paints and bread, her thoughts on Elias. The townsfolk's whispers had grown louder, tales of strange tracks near the forest's edge, of livestock gone missing. She overheard a farmer, Mr. Tully, muttering to a blacksmith. "Something's out there, I tell you. Bigger than a fox, meaner than a bear." Lila's stomach churned. She quickened her pace, but Mrs. Harrow's voice stopped her. "Lila, heard about the tracks? Folks say it's wolves. Real ones, not your paintings." "I wouldn't know," Lila said, her smile tight. "Just trying to keep my brushes clean." Mrs. Harrow's eyes narrowed. "You spend a lot of time in those woods. Seen anything unusual?" "Just trees," Lila said, turning away. But the baker's words lingered, and as she left the market, she noticed a group of men by the tavern, their voices low, their hands on pitchforks. One, a burly hunter named Gideon, caught her eye. "Careful out there, girl," he called. "Woods ain't safe." That night, Lila reached the clearing, her nerves frayed. Elias was there, his posture tense. "You're upset," he said, stepping closer. "What happened?" "The town's talking," Lila said, setting her lantern down. "Tracks missing sheep. They're scared, Elias, and my paintings aren't helping." He growled softly. "It's the rogues. They're getting bold, coming closer to Willow Haven." "Rogues?" Lila asked, her voice sharp. "You mentioned others, but who are they?" "Wolves like me, but worse," Elias said. "They don't fight the curse, they embrace it. They hunt for sport, not survival. I thought they'd stay away, but..." He trailed off, his eyes dark. "Why are they here?" Lila pressed. "I don't know," he admitted. "But if they find you with me, you're a target. Then we face them together," Lila said, her jaw set. Elias shook his head. "You're brave, Lila, but this isn't your fight." "It is now," she said, stepping closer. "I'm not letting you do this alone." They stood in silence, the weight of her words settling between them. As Elias left, a rustle sounded nearby. Not his steps, but something heavier. Lila's heart raced as she hurried home, the forest's edge alive with glowing eyes that weren't Elias's. The crescent moon hung like a sickle, its light barely touching the clearing. Lila arrived with a blanket and a defiant heart, determined to reclaim the joy she and Elias had found. He was waiting, his fur catching the faint glow, his eyes softer than the night before. "You brought a blanket," he said, a hint of a smile in his voice. "Thought we could use some comfort," Lila said, spreading it out. "No talk of rogues tonight, just us." Elias sat, his bulk surprisingly gentle on the blanket. "You're impossible," he said, but his tone was warm. "All right, just us." They lay back, the stars a glittering canopy above. Lila pointed to a constellation. "That's Orion. My father used to say it's a hunter, but I think it's a protector." Elias's voice softened. "I like that, a protector." He hesitated, then said, "Dance with me, Lila." She laughed, sitting up. "Dance? Here?" "Why not?" he said, standing and offering a clawed hand. "The moon's watching. Let's give it a show." Lila took his hand, her heart racing as they moved in the clearing, his steps surprisingly graceful. The forest seemed to hum, their laughter mingling with the night. "You're not bad for a wolf," she teased. "And you're not bad for a painter," he shot back, spinning her gently. For a moment, the world was just them, the moonlight their music. But a guttural growl shattered the moment, low and menacing. Elias froze, pushing Lila behind him. "Stay back," he whispered, his eyes scanning the trees. "What is it?" Lila asked, her voice trembling. "Rogues," Elias said, his voice a growl. "They're here." The shadows shifted, and Lila's breath caught as she saw them. Eyes, like embers, circling the clearing. Elias stood tall, ready to protect her, as the night turned from magic to menace. The clearing pulsed with danger, the rogue wolf's eyes glinting like knives in the dark. Lila clung to the blanket, her heart pounding, as Elias stood before her, his fur bristling. "Get behind the willow," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Now!" Lila scrambled to the tree, her hands shaking as she peered out. 3 wolves emerged, their forms lean and feral, their snarls cutting through the night. The largest, a scarred beast with matted black fur, stepped forward. "Elias!" it growled, its voice guttural but human. "You've strayed too far from the pack." "Varkis!" Elias spat, his stance unyielding. "I left you years ago. This isn't your territory." "You brought her here," Varkis said, his eyes flicking to Lila. "She smells of fear. And you reek of weakness." Lila's stomach twisted, but she stepped out, her voice steady. "Leave us alone. We're not hurting anyone." Varkis's laugh was a harsh bark, bold for prey. "Elias, you've gone soft, hiding behind a human." "I'm not hiding," Elias said, his claws flexing. "Walk away, Varkis. This doesn't end well for you." The rogue lunged, and Elias met him mid-air, their bodies crashing in a blur of fur and teeth. Lila stifled a scream, her eyes darting to the other wolves circling closer. "Elias!" she called, grabbing a branch from the ground. She swung it at a smaller wolf, its yelp sharp as it backed off. Elias and Varkis grappled, declaring a storm of snarls and dust. Elias's strength held, but Varkis was relentless, his claws raking Elias's side. "Run, Lila!" Elias shouted, pinning Varkis down. "I'm not leaving you!" she yelled, swinging the branch again. The other wolves hesitated, unnerved by her defiance. With a final roar, Elias threw Varkis back, the rogue retreating with a snarl. "This isn't over," Varkis hissed, vanishing with his pack. Elias panted, blood matting his fur. Lila rushed to him, her hands hovering over his wounds. "You're hurt," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll heal," he said, his eyes softening. "You were brave, Lila. Foolish, but brave." She managed a shaky smile. "You're welcome." They limped to her cottage, Elias leaning on her. As she bandaged him by candlelight, the forest outside grew quiet, but Lila knew the rogues were still out there, watching, waiting. Lila's cottage was a haven of flickering candlelight, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic and herbs as she tended Elias's wounds. His silver fur was matted with blood from the fight with Varkis, but his golden eyes remained steady, watching her with a mix of gratitude and worry. The rogue pack's attack had left them both shaken, yet it had solidified something between them, a partnership born of shared danger. Lila wrapped a bandage around his arm, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her. "You didn't have to fight," Elias said, his voice rough but soft. "You could have. Run." Lila met his gaze, her auburn hair falling over her shoulder. "And leave you to face those monsters alone. Not a chance." He chuckled, wincing as she tightened the bandage. "You're stubborn, Lila. Reckless, too." "Takes one to know one," she shot back, a smile tugging at her lips. "Now hold still, or I'll make this hurt more." Elias's ears flicked, and he leaned back against the wall. "You're getting too good at this. Nursing a werewolf wasn't in your plans, was it?" "No," she admitted, sitting back. "But neither was meeting someone like you. We're in this together now, Elias. Those rogues, they're not just your problem." His expression darkened. "They're my past, Lila. Varkis, he was like a brother once, but he chose the wolf over the man. I can't let him hurt you or Willowhaven." "Then we stop him," Lila said, her voice firm. "But we need a plan. You can't keep throwing yourself at them like that." Elias nodded, his claws tapping the wooden floor. "We need to train. You're brave, but bravery won't stop. Claws. I can teach you to move faster, to use the forest. Train? Lila raised an eyebrow. Like what, werewolf boot camp? He grinned, a flash of teeth. Something like that. Meet me in the clearing tomorrow. Bring that branch you. Swung. It's a start. They spent the night planning, Elias sketching crude maps of the forest in Lila's sketchbook, marking the rogues' likely paths. As dawn broke, he stood, his wounds already healing. Rest, he said, touching her shoulder. We start at dusk. Lila nodded, exhaustion settling in. She locked the door behind him, her heart pounding with purpose. But as she blew out, the candles, a shadow moved outside her window. A villager, Gideon the hunter, watching her cottage with narrowed eyes. She froze, the weight of Willowhaven's suspicions pressing down on her. Willowhaven's market was a storm of whispers. The next morning, the air thick with unease. Lila wove through the stalls, her basket empty, her thoughts on Elias and the rogues. The townsfolk's glances were sharper now, their voices hushed when she passed. Mr. Tully, the farmer, leaned close to Mrs. Harrow, muttering about beasts in the woods. Lila's paintings, still displayed in the gallery, had fueled their fears, each wolf's gaze seeming to mirror the tracks found near the forest. At the bread stall, Mrs. Harrow's smile was tight. Lila, you're pale as a ghost. Spending too much time in those woods? Just painting, Lila said, her tone light but guarded. The forest's inspiring, you know that. Inspiring or dangerous? Mrs. Harrow pressed, her eyes narrowing. Gideon saw something last night, a beast near your cottage. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Lila's heart skipped. Gideon sees what he wants to see, she said, forcing a laugh. Probably just a bear. Mrs. Harrow didn't laugh. Be careful, dear. Folk are scared, and scared folk do foolish things. Lila nodded, hurrying away. At the edge of the market, she spotted Gideon, his burly frame looming as he sharpened a knife. Lila, he called, his voice carrying over the crowd. You're out late these days. Woods ain't safe for a girl like you. I can handle myself, Lila replied, her chin high. Thanks for the concern. Gideon's eyes glinted. Concerns for the town. We're setting traps tonight. Whatever's out there, we'll catch it. Lila's stomach twisted, but she kept her face neutral. Good luck with that, she said, turning toward home. The forest loomed ahead, its shadows both a refuge and a threat. That evening, she met Elias in the clearing, her branch in hand. He was waiting, his fur catching the faint moonlight. Trouble. In town? He asked, reading her expression. Gideon's sniffing around, she said, gripping the branch. He saw you last night. They're setting traps. Elias growled. Damn hunters. We'll have to be careful. Ready to train? Ready, Lila said, planting her feet. Elias taught her to move silently, to use the trees for cover, his voice steady as he guided her. You're quick, he said, dodging her swing. But you need to be quicker. Keep up, Wolf, she teased, her breath coming fast. They trained until midnight, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. As Elias left, he squeezed her hand. You're stronger than you know. Lila walked home, her muscles aching, but her spirit buoyed, unaware of Gideon's silhouette watching from the forest's edge. Lila's cottage was quiet the next morning, but her mind buzzed with the memory of training with Elias. His strength, his patience, it drew her closer, even as Gideon's threats loomed. She was tidying her desk when she found it, a tattered journal, half hidden under her sketchbook, its leather cover worn. It wasn't hers. Elias must have left it during their planning session. Curiosity burned as she opened it, revealing pages of cramped handwriting and sketches of the moon. The entries were Elias's, detailing his life before Willowhaven. Varkis and I ran together, one page read. He taught me to hunt, to survive the curse. But he loved the wolf too much. I left when he killed for sport. Lila's breath caught. Elias had been part of the rogue pack, a truth he'd only hinted at. She read on, her heart heavy, until a knock startled her. It was Mrs. Harrow holding a loaf of bread. "Thought you might need this," the baker said, her eyes scanning the room. "You're looking troubled, Lila." "Just tired," Lila said, tucking the journal behind her. "Thanks for the bread." Mrs. Harrow lingered. "Gideon's rallying folk tonight. Says he'll hunt whatever's in the woods. You'd best stay in." Lila nodded, her mind racing. That night, she met Elias in the clearing, the journal in her bag. "You left this," she said, holding it out. "I read it, Elias. Why didn't you tell me you were one of them?" His ears flattened, shame in his eyes. "I didn't want you to see me that way. I left the pack, Lila. I chose to be better." "But you didn't tell me," she said, her voice trembling. "I trusted you." "You still can," he said, stepping closer. "I'm not that wolf anymore. You've seen who I am." Lila's anger softened, but doubt lingered. "No more secrets, Elias. Promise me." "I promise," he said, his voice raw. They trained in silence, the journal's weight between them. As he left, Elias's eyes held hers. "I'll earn your trust back." Lila returned home. The journal, clutched tight, but a torn page fluttered out, hinting at a ritual to break the curse. Her heart raced. She had to know more. Lila sat by her cottage's hearth, the torn journal page in her hands. The firelight illuminated Elias's scrawl. "The curse can be broken under a blood moon, but only by facing the Alpha's heart." The words sent a chill through her. Varkis was the Alpha, and the next blood moon was weeks away. She needed answers, but Elias's promise of no secrets gave her hope. Willowhaven's streets were quiet as she headed to the market, but Gideon's voice boomed near the tavern, rallying men with tales of monsters. "Lila!" Mr. Tully called, his face grim. "Stay out of the woods! Gideon's traps are set." "Thanks for the warning," Lila said, her thoughts on the journal. That night, she met Elias in the clearing, the page in her pocket. "I found something," she said, handing it to him. "A ritual to break your curse. Why didn't you mention it?" Elias's eyes widened. "I thought it was a myth. Facing Varkis. It's suicide, Lila." "Not if we do it together," she said, her voice steady. "You want to be free, don't you?" "More than anything," he admitted, his voice breaking. "But not at your cost. The ritual. It's dangerous. Blood for blood." "I'm not afraid," Lila said, stepping closer. "We'll find a way. Tell me everything you know." Elias explained the ritual's risks, confronting Varkis under a blood moon, a sacrifice of will and strength. They planned, their voices low, their bond rebuilding. As he left, he gripped her hand. "You're my reason to fight, Lila." She walked home, determination burning, but the howls of the rogue pack echoed closer, a promise of danger drawing near. Lila woke to a town on edge, Willowhaven's streets buzzing with fear. Gideon's traps had caught nothing, but fresh tracks near the mill fueled panic. Lila avoided the market, her thoughts on the blood moon and the ritual. She packed a bag, her sketchbook, a knife, the journal page, and headed to the clearing. At dusk, Elias was waiting, his fur bristling with tension. "We can't wait," Lila said, her voice firm. "The rogues are closing in. We need to find Varkis's lair now." Elias nodded, his eyes grim. "It's deep in the forest, past the old oak grove. But Lila, if we go, there's no turning back." "I'm ready," she said, gripping her knife. "Lead the way." They moved through the forest, Elias's senses guiding them past Gideon's traps. The trees grew denser, the air thick with menace. "Stay close," Elias whispered, his claws flexing. "Varkis's pack is near." "How? Do you know?" Lila asked, her voice low. "I smell them," he said, his nose twitching. "Blood and hunger." They reached a ravine, its shadows hiding a cave mouth. A low growl echoed, and Varkis stepped out, his black fur gleaming. "Elias!" he snarled. "You brought your pet to die." "She's no pet," Elias growled, stepping forward. "This ends, Varkis." Before Lila could react, two rogues lunged from the shadows, their claws flashing. Elias roared, meeting them head-on, as Lila ducked behind a tree, her knife ready, the forest erupting into chaos. The ravine pulsed with danger, the cave mouth yawning like a wound in the earth. Lila crouched behind a gnarled tree, her knife gleaming in the faint moonlight, as two rogue wolves lunged at Elias. Their snarls tore through the night, their claws flashing like daggers. Elias met them with a roar, his silver fur a blur as he grappled with the smaller of the two, a wiry beast with matted grey fur. Varkis watched from the cave's entrance, his black fur bristling, his ember-like eyes fixed on Lila. "Elias, behind you!" Lila shouted, gripping her knife. The second, rogue, a lean wolf with a scarred muzzle, circled to flank him. Lila's training with Elias kicked in. She darted forward, slashing her knife at the rogue's hind leg. It yelped, stumbling, and Elias seized the moment, pinning the grey wolf to the ground. "Stay back, Lila," Elias growled, his voice strained as he wrestled the rogue. "They're too fast!" "I'm not helpless," she snapped, dodging a snap of jaws from the scarred rogue. She swung her knife again, grazing its flank, and it retreated, snarling. Elias's claws raked the grey wolf, sending it scurrying into the shadows. Varkis let out a low, mocking laugh. "You've trained your pet well, Elias," he taunted, stepping forward. "But she's still prey." Lila's blood boiled. "Call me that again, and I'll carve my name in your hide," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Varkis's eyes narrowed, but Elias stepped between them, his fur bristling. "This is between us, Varkis. Leave her out of it." The alpha's laugh was a guttural bark. "You can't protect her forever. The pack claims what it wants." He lunged, but Elias was ready, meeting Itlnu's system, their bodies crashing. Together in a storm of fur and fury. Lila backed against the tree, her knife raised as the two wolves fought. Elias's strength held, but Varkis was relentless, his claws tearing at Elias's side. With a final roar, Elias threw Varkis back, the alpha retreating into the cave with a snarl. "Run, Lila!" Elias shouted, his voice hoarse. "I'm not leaving!" she yelled, her eyes locked on the scarred rogue circling back. She swung her knife, forcing it to retreat. The grey wolf whimpered, limping away, and the scarred rogue followed, their eyes glinting with rage. Varkis stood at the cave mouth, his gaze burning. "This isn't over, Elias. The blood moon's coming. You'll face me then." He vanished into the darkness, his pack slinking after him. Lila rushed to Elias, her hands trembling as she checked his wounds. Blood matted his fur, but his golden eyes were fierce. "You're hurt," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll heal," he said, his breath ragged. "You were incredible, Lila. I've never seen anyone stand up to rogues like that." She managed a shaky smile, helping him stand. "Let's get you cleaned up, again." They limped back through the forest, the moonlight fading as dawn approached. At her cottage, Lila bandaged Elias's wounds, her hands steady now. "You scared me out there," she said softly. "I scared myself," he admitted, his voice low. "But you held your own." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "We're a team, Elias. Don't forget that." He nodded, his hand brushing hers. "I won't." They sat in silence, the weight of the fight settling between them. As Elias left to rest in the forest, Lila locked her door, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. Outside, the forest was silent, but she knew Varkis's promise lingered in the shadows. Lila woke to the scent of rain, the patter of drops against her cottage windows mirroring the unease in her heart. The fight with the rogues had left her, shaken, Elias's wounds a stark reminder of the danger they faced. She sat at her desk, her sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of Elias's golden eyes, but her pencil lay still. The journal page about the blood moon ritual sat beside it, its words heavy with promise and peril. A knock startled her. Mrs. Harrow stood at the door, her umbrella dripping. Lila, you look like you haven't slept, the baker said, stepping inside. What's got you so pale? Just a rough night, Lila said, forcing a smile. Tea? Mrs. Harrow nodded, her eyes sharp. The town's in a state. Gideon's saying he found blood in the woods, says it's proof of monsters. Lila's stomach churned. He's always hunting something, she said, pouring tea. Probably just a fox. Maybe, Mrs. Harrow said, sipping her tea. But folk are scared. You're out there a lot, Lila. Be careful what you're mixed up in. Lila's grip tightened on her cup. I'm just painting, Mrs. Harrow. Nothing more. The baker's gaze lingered, but she left without pressing further. That evening, Lila met Elias in the clearing, the rain soaking her shawl. He stood under the willow, his wounds healing, but his posture tense. You're soaked, he said, pulling her under the tree. I don't care, she said, her voice shaking. Elias, last night. It was too close. What if we can't stop them? He took her hands, his claws gentle. You're doubting us now? Not us, she said, looking up. But this fight, it's bigger than us. Varkis wants blood, and the town's turning against me. Gideon's watching my cottage. Elias's eyes darkened. Gideon's a problem, but Varkis is worse. If we don't stop him, he'll tear through Willowhaven. Lila's voice broke. And if we lose? If I lose you? He pulled her close, his warmth cutting through the rain. You won't. I've fought too hard to find you. But Lila, this ritual, it's not just facing Varkis. It demands a sacrifice. I don't know what it'll take. Then we'll find out together, she said, her resolve hardening. No more running. They sat under the willow, planning the ritual, their voices low against the rain. As Elias left, he kissed her forehead. You're my strength, Lila. She walked home, her heart steady, but her eyes catching a glint in the trees. Gideon, his knife gleaming, watching her every step. Willowhaven's tavern was a storm of voices, the air thick with ale and fear. Lila slipped inside, her shawl hiding her face, hoping to gauge the town's mood. Gideon stood on a table, his voice booming. The woods are crawling with beasts, he shouted, brandishing a bloodied trap. I found this near the mill. We hunt tonight. Mr. Tully nodded, his face grim. My sheep are gone. Something's out there, Gideon. Lila's heart sank. She edged toward the door, but Mrs. Harrow spotted her. Lila, what are you doing here? She whispered, pulling her aside. This ain't safe. I need to know what they're planning, Lila said, her voice low. They're after Elias. Mrs. Harrow's eyes widened. Elias, that's the beast you're with. Lila froze, realizing her slip. I mean, the wolves. They're not what Gideon thinks. Mrs. Harrow gripped her arm. Child, you're in deep. Gideon's got the town riled up. Stay out of the woods tonight. Lila nodded, slipping out into the rain. That night she met Elias in a hidden grove, away from the clearing. Gideon's hunting, she said, her breath misting in the cold. They found blood in your traps, Elias growled. Varkis's pack is baiting them, stirring the town up. It's a distraction. For what? Lila asked, her eyes wide. To isolate us, Elias said. Varkis knows we're planning something. We need to move faster. Then let's find his lair, Lila said, her voice fierce. We end this before the blood moon. Elias's eyes softened. You're braver than I am, Lila. Hardly, she said, squeezing his hand. They scouted the forest, avoiding Gideon's traps, their steps silent. As they parted, Elias's gaze lingered. Stay sharp, Lila. She nodded, heading home, but a torch flickered in the distance. Gideon's men patrolling the woods, their voices echoing with threats. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, the air thick with the scent of wet pine. Lila and Elias moved deeper, the cave Varkis called home looming ahead. The blood moon was weeks away, but the rogue pack's presence was a growing threat. Lila's knife hung at her belt, her training with Elias making her movements sure. Elias's fur gleamed faintly, his eyes scanning the darkness. "This is it," he whispered, pausing at the ravine's edge. The cave mouth was a black maw, its depths pulsing with menace. "Varkas is in there." Lila's heart pounded. "What's the plan? We can't just walk in." "We don't," Elias said. "We draw him out. I'll challenge him, alpha to alpha." "That's insane," Lila said, grabbing his arm. "He'll kill you." "Not if you're with me," he said, his voice steady. "You're my edge, Lila. Varkas won't expect you." She nodded, her resolve hardening. "Let's do it." Elias let out a low howl, the sound echoing through the ravine. Varkas emerged, his black fur bristling, his eyes burning. "You've got nerve, Elias," he snarled, "bringing her here to die." "She's here to end you," Elias growled, stepping forward. "Face me, Varkas. 1-on-1. Varkas laughed, his claws flexing. "You're weak. Always were." He lunged, and the duel began, their bodies a storm of claws and teeth. Lila circled, her knife ready, waiting for an opening. Varkas's tail lashed, catching her leg, and she fell, pain shooting through her. Elias roared, slamming Varkas against the cave wall. "Lila!" Elias shouted, his eyes wild. "I'm fine!" she yelled, scrambling up. She threw a rock, hitting Varkas's flank, giving Elias a moment to strike. The alpha staggered, blood dripping, but his eyes locked on Lila, promising retribution. The ravine was a battlefield, the air thick with the scent of blood and earth. Varkas's roar shook the trees as he charged Elias, their claws tearing at each other. Lila's leg throbbed, but she gripped her knife, her eyes darting for an opening. The rogue pack watched from the shadows, their growls a low rumble, but they didn't interfere. Varkas's pride demanded a solo fight. "Stay down, Lila," Elias shouted, dodging Varkas's claws. "Not a chance," she yelled, circling the fight. She spotted a loose boulder above the cave and climbed, her hands scraping against the rock. If she could push it, it might stun Varkas. "You're nothing." "Elias!" Varkas snarled, his jaws snapping. "You betrayed the pack for her." "She's worth it," Elias growled, slamming Varkas into the ground. Lila pushed the boulder, her muscles straining. It rolled, crashing onto Varkas's back, and he howled, pinned. Elias pounced, his claws at Varkas's throat. "Yield, Varkas!" The alpha spat blood. "You'll never be free. The curse binds us both." Lila slid down, her knife raised. "What does that mean?" she demanded. Varkas's eyes glinted. "The curse is shared. Kill me, and Elias pays. A price." Elias's grip tightened, but doubt flickered in his eyes. "He's lying," he said, but his voice wavered. Lila's heart raced. "We'll find another way." She turned to Varkas. "Tell us how to break it." Varkas laughed, weak but defiant. "The blood moon, a life for a life." He broke free, lunging at Lila, but Elias tackled him, their bodies rolling into the cave's darkness. Lila followed, her knife gleaming, as the fight vanished into the shadows, Varkas's words echoing in her mind. The cave's darkness swallowed Lila and Elias, the echoes of Varkas's words. A life for a life, ringing in their ears. Lila's knife gleamed in her hand, her leg aching from the fall, but her resolve burned brighter. Elias pinned Varkas against the cave wall, his claws at the alpha's throat, but doubt shadowed his golden eyes. The rogue pack's growls had faded, leaving only the three of them in the damp, oppressive air. Torchlight from Lila's dropped lantern cast flickering shadows, illuminating Varkas's scarred face. "Speak, Varkas," Elias growled, his voice raw. "What's the price of the curse?" Varkas's laugh was a wet rasp, blood dripping from his maw. "You think it's simple, Elias. The curse binds us all, those bitten under the blood moon. Kill me, and it tightens its grip on you." Lila stepped closer, her knife steady. "You're lying. You just want to save your own hide." Varkas's ember-like eyes locked on hers. Am I? Ask him about the night we were cursed. He knows who betrayed us. Elias's grip faltered, his ears flattening. Don't listen to him, Lila. Tell me, she said, her voice firm but soft. No more secrets, Elias. You promised. Elias released Varkis, stepping back, his fur bristling. It was our mentor, Torin, he said, his voice heavy. He was like a father to us, taught us to survive the curse. But he wanted power, control, over the pack. He made a deal with a witch under a blood moon, binding us to her magic. I tried to stop him, but Varkis, he followed Torin's path. Varkis snarled. You abandoned us. You left me to rot with this curse while you played. Human, I left to be better, Elias snapped. You chose bloodlust. Lila's mind raced. The ritual, does it break the curse for everyone, or just you, Elias? Varkis's eyes glinted. Everyone, if you kill the Alpha under the blood moon. But the witch's magic demands a price, something you love. Lila's heart sank. What does that mean? It means pain, Varkis said, his voice low. You'll lose him, girl. One way or another, Elias growled, lunging. But Lila grabbed his arm. Stop! We need him alive until we understand this. She turned to Varkis. Where's the witch? Long dead, Varkis said. Her magic lives in the curse. You'll face it at the blood moon. Elias's eyes met Lila's, a silent vow passing between them. We'll find a way, he said. They bound Varkis with vines, leaving him in the cave, and retreated to the forest. At Lila's cottage, they pored over the journal, searching for clues about the ritual. As dawn broke, Elias squeezed her hand. We'll break this, Lila. Together. She nodded, but Varkis's words haunted her, and outside, Gideon's torchlight flickered closer, the town's hunt drawing near. The blood moon loomed, its promise heavy in the air as Lila and Elias prepared for the ritual. Willowhaven buzzed with fear, Gideon's hunt intensifying after more tracks were found. Lila avoided the market, her cottage a fortress of planning. She and Elias had moved Varkis to a hidden grove, bound and guarded, his taunts silenced but his presence a constant threat. The journal's pages offered little clarity, but Lila's resolve grew. She would free Elias, no matter the cost. In the grove, under a waxing moon, they finalized their plan. Elias's fur caught the light, his wounds nearly healed. The ritual needs the Alpha's blood, he said, his voice low. Varkis dies under the blood moon, and I speak the words from the journal. And the sacrifice? Lila asked, her voice trembling. Elias looked away. I don't know. The journal says, what binds the heart? It could mean anything. Then we face it together, Lila said, gripping his hand. No matter what. He pulled her close, his warmth, steadying her. You're my heart, Lila. If it's you, I won't let it happen. Don't say that, she whispered. We'll find another way. They trained in the grove, Lila's knife flashing as Elias taught her to anticipate Varkis's moves. You're getting good, he said, dodging her strike. Good enough to save you, she teased, breathless. But their laughter faded as a howl echoed. Varkis, testing his bonds. He's restless, Elias said. We need to move him before the moon. They dragged Varkis deeper into the forest, his eyes burning with defiance. You'll fail, he spat. The curse always wins. Shut up, Lila snapped, tightening the vines. But as they returned to the grove, a twig snapped nearby. Lila froze, her knife raised. Elias, someone's here. He sniffed the air, his ears flattening. Gideon. They hid, watching as the hunter crept past, his torch casting wild shadows. He's too close, Elias whispered. We need to act now. They hurried to the cottage, the ritual's weight pressing down. Lila clutched the journal, her heart racing. As Elias left to scout, she lit a candle, but a crash outside made her jump. Varkis's bonds were cut, and his howl rang out. The blood moon just nights away. The blood moon rose, painting Willowhaven's forest in crimson. Lila and Elias stood in a hidden clearing, Varkis bound at its center, his black fur glinting like oil. The journal lay open, its ritual words memorized. Lila's knife hung at her belt, her heart pounding with fear and hope. The town's torches flickered in the distance, Gideon's hunt closing in, but the ritual demanded their focus. "You ready?" Elias asked, his golden eyes steady. "As I'll ever be," Lila said, her voice firm. "Let's end this." Varkis laughed, his voice weak but venomous. "You'll lose her, Elias. The curse demands it. Keep talking, and I'll end you now." Elias growled, his claws flexing. He began the ritual, chanting words from the journal, his voice echoing with power. The air thickened, the moon's light pulsing. Lila stood ready, her knife raised, as Varkis's eyes widened. "You feel it, don't you?" Varkis taunted. The curse fighting back. Lila ignored him, watching Elias. His fur shimmered, his form flickering between man and wolf. "Keep going," she urged, her voice cutting through the chant. Elias's voice grew stronger, but pain twisted his face. "Lila, it's working, but it hurts." "Hold on," she cried, stepping closer. Varkis lunged, snapping his vines, but Lila was faster, her knife slashing his shoulder. He howled, collapsing, and Elias drove his claws into Varkis's chest, drawing blood. The ritual's climax came, Elias's chant peaking as the blood moon glowed brighter. A force surged, knocking Lila back. Elias screamed, his body convulsing, but Varkis's form stilled, his eyes dimming. The air cleared, and Elias fell, human, now, his fur gone. Lila rushed to him, her hands shaking. "Elias, are you okay?" he gasped, his eyes human but haunted. "It's done. The curse is broken." Varkis lay dead, the pack's howls fading. But torches approached. Gideon and his men. "We're not safe yet," Lila said, helping Elias stand. They fled the clearing, his human form weak but free, as the town's shouts grew louder. Dawn broke over Willowhaven, the blood moon gone, but the forest buzzed with Gideon's men. Lila and Elias hid in a thicket, his human form unfamiliar yet comforting. His dark hair fell over his brow, his golden eyes now a warm hazel, but exhaustion marked his face. Lila's leg ached, her knife still bloodied from Varkis, but their victory felt fragile with the town closing in. "We can't hide forever," Lila whispered, her breath misting in the morning chill. "They'll find us." "Then we face them," Elias said, his voice hoarse but resolute. "The curse is gone. They need to know the truth." Lila nodded, her heart racing. Together. They emerged into Willowhaven Square, where Gideon stood with Mr. Tully and a dozen men, torches and pitchforks raised. Mrs. Harrow watched from the crowd, her face pale. "There she is!" Gideon shouted, pointing at Lila. "And that's no man!" "He's human now," Lila said, stepping forward. "The beast you're hunting is dead. Elias was cursed, but we broke it." "Lies!" Gideon spat, raising his knife. "You've been hiding a monster." Elias stepped beside Lila, his hands raised. "I was cursed, Gideon, but I fought it for Willowhaven. Varkis is gone. The real threat is over." Mrs. Harrow pushed forward, her eyes wide. "Lila, is this true? He's human." "Yes," Lila said, her voice steady. "He protected me, protected all of us. Look at him," the crowd murmured, some lowering their weapons. Mr. Tully stepped forward, his face softening. "I've lost sheep, but you killed the beast?" "We did," Elias said, meeting his gaze. "I'm no threat now." Gideon's face twisted. "I don't trust him." But the crowd's mood shifted, Mrs. Harrow's voice calming them. "Enough blood," she said. "Let's hear them out." Lila and Elias explained, their story swaying hearts. Gideon stormed off, his men dispersing. As the crowd thinned, Mrs. Harrow squeezed Lila's hand. "You're brave, child." Lila and Elias returned to her cottage, their bond unshaken, but a distant howl hinted at one last rogue lurking. The forest was quiet, the morning sun filtering through Willowhaven's pines. Lila and Elias stood at the clearing's edge, their hands entwined, the weight of the blood moon behind them. The town had accepted their truth. Gideon's hunt disbanded, but the final rogue's howl lingered in Lila's mind. Her cottage was a sanctuary now, her paintings of Elias, human and wolf, adorning the walls, a testament to their journey. "We're not done yet," Elias said, his hazel eyes scanning the trees. "One rogue's still out there." "Then we finish it," Lila said, her knife at her belt. Together, they tracked the rogue, its tracks leading to the old oak grove. The scarred wolf from their first fight emerged, its eyes wild but alone. "No pack left," it growled, its voice broken. "You took everything." "You chose Varkis," Elias said, stepping forward. "This ends now." The rogue lunged, but Lila was ready, her knife flashing as Elias tackled it. Their teamwork was seamless, the rogue's strength no match for their bond. With a final strike, Elias ended it, the forest falling silent. They buried the rogue, a final act of closure. Back in the clearing, Lila smiled, the sun warming her face. "We did it, Elias. You're free." He pulled her close, his human hands warm. "We're free. You gave me that, Lila." She laughed, her heart light. "You gave me something too, a home in you." Willowhaven embraced them, Mrs. Harrow baking bread for their return, Mr. Tully offering sheep for their new life. The forest, once a place of fear, became their sanctuary, where Lila painted and Elias built, their love a beacon. As they stood, hand in hand, the dawn promising new beginnings, Lila knew their bond was wild, fierce, and beautifully untamed.